Well, yes, let's talk more about what is happening in the Brexit debate, because as we've heard, Theresa May issued a warning this morning that if Brexiteers don't back her deal, then Parliament could stop the UK leaving the EU altogether. Number 10 has also published those letters between the Prime Minister and EU leaders attempting to assuage fears about the Northern Ireland backstop. Well, with me to discuss the possible outcome of everything is Dr. Hannah White, Deputy Director of the Institute for Government. Welcome, thanks for joining us. So Theresa May basically saying it's possible there'll be no Brexit if MPs don't support her agreement tomorrow. MPs are flexing their muscles. They're saying that they don't want there to be no deal. There are various things going on to try to tie the government's hands. So we can talk about procedural matters with you. And it's going to become really important actually tomorrow, isn't it? Because lots of amendments are being put forward, which is basically what backbenchers do when they want to try to get what they want to happen to get voted on. Talk us through how things might unfold tomorrow.
Yes, so obviously it's really crucial what MPs decide to do in terms of which amendments to Theresa May's motion they want to support or not. But what is also really crucial is how the procedure plays out in the House. And as we saw last week, that one of the key players is the Speaker, John Bercow. Had you asked me this time last week, I would have given you a very confident answer about how the procedure would be going to work. But following events last week where Speaker Bercow did some unexpected things with procedure, it's a little less clear exactly how it is going to play out.
Basically allowed an amendment that people thought shouldn't have been allowed.
Exactly. So there was an amendment which was made to the business motion, which is how the House decides it's going to deal with a certain debate. Some people have argued that was an amendment that shouldn't have been allowed, but that's meant that should the government's deal tomorrow not be agreed to by the House, that the government now has to come back within 3 sitting days with an alternative plan.
OK, so tomorrow we'll have the vote, but the amendments get voted on prior to the vote.
Exactly. So you have the government's motion which says that the House agrees with its withdrawal agreement and agrees with the statement of the future relationship with the EU, which the government has negotiated. But MPs can attempt to change the wording of that and get the House to agree to something different. Now, the way you would normally do it is that you would take those amendments in the order in which they occur in the words of the motion. And if they were occurring at the same point in the motion, you would take them in the order in which they were tabled. Now, that is, as I say, how you would normally do it. But the consequence of that tomorrow would be there are several amendments which happen at the same place in the wording. And if you had a vote on the first one and that was agreed to, then all the other amendments that were to the same point in the wording, then would fall. There wouldn't be a vote on those amendments. Now, I think it's highly likely that the Speaker is going to want to make sure, given what we saw last week, that the House of Commons has the opportunity to decide and express its view and see what the majority is for lots of these different amendments. So I wouldn't be surprised if he is trying to find a way to make sure that there can be multiple votes on amendments without the subsequent amendments being wiped out by earlier decisions of the House.
And so what are the amendments expected to be?
So there are amendments. So there's the one which seems to command the most support is one tabled by Hilary Benn, which says basically we don't like the government's deal, but we don't want a no-deal exit from the EU either, and calls on the government to bring forward an alternative plan. Now, there's some controversy over that. People are apparently trying to get him to not move that amendment, to actually take it off the order paper, because they're worried that if it passes by just a few votes, and then the government gets to have a vote on its motion as amended, it will only lose by a few votes, and it won't look as though the government has suffered the scale of defeat that it's in some people's interests for it to look like it's suffered. So Labour want the government to have a big defeat so they can say, well, there's an argument now for a general election. And people who want a different form of Brexit also want Theresa May's deal to be, really voted down by a large majority. So there's pressure on Hilary Benn to withdraw his amendment so that won't be voted on. Then there were a number of other amendments, several which were about the backstop, about this arrangement that would come into place if the UK and the EU don't get a trade deal in place that would avoid a hard border coming in Northern Ireland. And there were some amendments which
wants to time limit it, effectively.
Exactly, but the point is that some of these amendments may in fact be compromise ideas from number 10 which have been put down by amenable backbenchers. So there are some that the government may be willing to accept. There's also a Labour amendment tabled by John Mann, which is about strengthening protections for workers' rights,
which the government said it's backing,
and so on. So there are a number of different amendments, and I think it's likely that the Speaker will try to find the opportunity to see if there's a majority for those different amendments.
Okay, I mean the parliamentary procedure is becoming really important now, isn't it?
It is.
This? So it's good to be able to
Everyone needs to be an
walk
expert.
through it. Exactly, definitely. Thank you very much indeed.